Welcome back to Watch Your Assets, where we've got your money on our minds. I'm Stephanie Bracken, and I wanted to tell you guys about what happened to me this morning. So, at like 4 a.m., I woke up to the sound of a truck backing up. You know how it makes that beeping noise? And I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, I don't know why someone's doing construction this early in the morning, but whatever. I kind of just rolled over, went back to sleep. So then I get up to get ready for work this morning. And our water shut off. And in that moment, you're like, this is an inconvenience. But then as you're going through your morning routine, you forget how important it is to have running water. You can't brush your teeth. Like I had to pour a cup out of my Brita pitcher to brush my teeth with. You can't go to the bathroom. You can't take a shower. There's just little things. You can't wash your face. Like all of these things you need when you are getting ready for work, right? Like I want to come to work. I want to smell nice. I want to have hair brushed, teeth brushed. And your morning routine looks different because you didn't plan for that to happen. Why would anybody think that that was going to happen to them in the morning? So it's a little bit of an inconvenience, but it got me thinking about how similar to that our finances are. Because how many times do we think we have a plan in place, or maybe we don't have a plan in place, and then something happens and we're not prepared for it. And it causes a huge, probably way more of an inconvenience than not having water for a few hours. That inconvenience of not having your finances in order can be really, really stressful. So as we close out 2025 and we look to 2026, now's a really great time to review your financial plan, your goals, define goals if you don't have any, and then see what your progress is like towards those goals, or how can you progress forward every day in 2026 as we look to this new year. Everybody wants to set New Year's resolutions, but I don't know if a lot of people set goals around their finances. I feel like that's one of those areas that people don't always think is important, but money is such a critical part of all of our lives, whether we want to believe that or not. It is going to be so, so important to take your money goals just as seriously as you do these other goals in your life. Maybe you have goals to develop a better relationship with a family member or your partner. Maybe you want to get healthier. Maybe you want to lose weight. That's a big piece of people's goals for the new year, is to get healthier, right? The gyms are always really full in January, February, but then people slip back into old habits. And then by March, April, we're back to the same people who were in the gym in November, December of the previous year. So goals, you have to set them, and then you have to stick with them. You have to develop the discipline that is necessary to actually fulfill and reach those goals. But that can be hard to do if you don't have any. And so I want to talk about, when we're thinking about our finances, defining your goals, and then what are the steps you can take to getting you closer and closer to those goals. Now, some goals are short-term goals. You can accomplish them in 5, 6, 7 months. Something like paying off a small credit card, building up an emergency fund, starting to figure out how you can live within your means, eating out less, cutting back on shopping, anything like that. Those are really short-term goals that are pretty easy to accomplish. Then you might have your medium-term goals. So that's going to be something that takes you maybe 1 to 3 years to accomplish, whether that's paying off a car, building up an emergency fund to an even greater level, starting to contribute to your 401k and getting that to a certain percentage, or whatever, whatever that goal looks like. Then there's your long-term goals. Long-term goals can be, anywhere between 5 to 10, 20 years. Something like retirement is going to be a big one for people. That's going to be kind of the hallmark. And I've talked about this in previous episodes, but retirement's kind of the hallmark of what people define for success in terms of their finances. So goals can be anything you want them to be. They can be as minuscule as, again, building up $1,000 in an emergency fund. They can be as big as, I want to have $3 million in my portfolio. But goals are extremely personalized to you and your situation. So let's talk about first how we define goals. So really what this comes down to, there's a little bit of psychology that goes into this. There's a little bit of psychology that goes into money management in general. And I've talked about this in a previous episode too, but when you're thinking about your goals, you really have to think about, like, at the core of your being, what is it that you want? And you don't have to put a number to it, but just think about what would be the thing, like if money was no longer an issue, quote unquote, in your life, what would your life look like? What would you want your life to look like if you had financial peace, if you felt really secure in your finances? What would that look like for you? Is that just, again, having enough money in the bank to, if you had to replace your roof tomorrow, if you had that much money in the bank and didn't have to put it on a credit card, is that the thing that helps you sleep better at night? Is it, helping your family and helping your legacy? Do you want to you have enough money that you can fund college for your children and grandchildren, and maybe even eventually great grandchildren if you have enough to pass on to your children so that their grandchildren can have their college paid for? So it's thinking long term, which is not always something we do. I think a lot of times we are short-term thinkers because of the financial stress that a lot of us are under, whether we feel that pressure or not. There's still the pressure of, what is my money situation going to look like tomorrow? So it's hard to think about long-term goals if you're really worried about what can even happen to you in the short term. So defining goals and having something to look towards can really help you stay on track towards those goals. But your goals have to be deep. They have to be personal. They have to bring you to tears almost sometimes, because otherwise, if those goals aren't strong enough, it's really easy to fall off of those. It's really easy. I think it's really difficult to be healthy and to work out if I don't have something I'm working towards. My boyfriend is very into running triathlons. And so when he is working out, he has an end goal in mind. I don't run triathlons. I don't run marathons. So for me, if I don't have a goal that I'm working towards with my health and I'm just working out just because, like, I want to just feel good about myself, that's a little harder for me to stay motivated. But if you have a deadline for a goal like that, it makes it easier to stick to, because you know that on April 24th of 2026, I'm going to be running this marathon, and that is the thing that I'm working towards. And I signed up for it. I paid money for it, and I have to run this marathon, because at the end of it, you get a medal, right? You get the honor of crossing that finish line, and you get this rush of, gosh, I did that. Like, that's such a cool thing to do that not everybody does, but it's because you had that deadline in place that it forced you to develop habits that got you closer to that goal every single day. But if you have no goals, and again, you're just doing it for general health, sometimes that's a little bit harder to do every day. It's a little bit harder to, it's easier to say it's getting cold outside. It's easier to say, I want to just stay in, watch a movie, and eat, like order DoorDash. But whenever you have that discipline, even if you started out by having some kind of goal and a deadline, as you develop those habits, it becomes a little easier to do even once that deadline is passed. So discipline is really going to be part of this conversation too, because having the goal is fantastic, but if you just have a goal and you don't do anything, that's a wish. That's a hope. Like, you didn't do anything to get you to move even 5 yards towards that next goal. So it's important to define goals that are very powerful and moving to you. And I can't define that for you. I can certainly spitball with you as I'm sitting with you to help you define some of those goals. But at the end of the day, that's got to be something that's extremely personal to you and that matters to you. And it's going to look different for every person. What's a goal for me might not be a goal for you, and vice versa. But I honor your goals. I want you to get closer to those goals every single day. And I want to help you, at the very least, define what those are, so that you can at least think about your money goals. Because again, that's not something that we talk about a lot. So having something in mind to work towards in the short term, the intermediate term, and the long term is going to be really, really helpful. Then what do we do after we define these goals? So I think it's helpful to have maybe like 2-3 goals that you can work towards, just so you don't overwhelm yourself. Because if you have 17 goals, you're never going to be able to accomplish all of those. So or at least you won't feel like you're making progress towards those. But 2 or 3 is enough that gives you some guardrails of, okay, I want to be debt free by the time I retire, and I want to be able to pass on a large legacy to my family. Like if those are your goals, then that's way more attainable because there's only a couple of them to work towards. So once you've defined the why behind your goals and why you're working so hard, why you're saving, all doing all of these things to inch you closer to those goals, then let's put a timeline on them. So let's think about, okay, 6 months from now, I am holding myself accountable to having an emergency fund with $5,000 in it. And then you can work backwards to figure out how much money you need to save each month to get to $5,000 in 6 months. If you say, I want to live a comfortable retirement, we need to define that a little bit more because what is comfortable to one person is not the same comfort level to somebody else. So, when you say comfortable, I need more information about what you deem to be comfortable. Is that the ability to travel whenever you want to and drop, 10, 20 grand on a trip every year? Is that just the ability to live the same lifestyle you're living now, that you live a humble life, a simple life, and you just want to be able to continue that lifestyle in retirement? That's fantastic. So then we can again work backwards to figure out, okay, if your living expenses are $60,000 a year just for your normal living expenses between your utilities, your gas, your food, things like that. If we determine that you need $5,000 a month to live on, we can work backwards to figure out how much you need to have saved by the time you retire to live that same lifestyle that you're living now. So being able to define when you want those goals to happen by, and then assigning a number to it, are going to make things more digestible. If it's just, I want to retire comfortably, and it's kind of vague, right? It's just kind of happening. I want to live comfortably. Like it's a great goal. It's a great place to start, but we need to hone in on that a little bit and figure out what that really means to you in terms of numbers and in terms of lifestyle. And then again, that's where the discipline comes in. So you've set these goals. I've heard that, the more often you physically see your goals, the more likely you are to remember them. Your subconscious remembers them. I've seen people write sticky notes on their bathroom mirrors with goals they want to accomplish, so that every morning when they're getting ready, they see that goal, $1 million by 2030 or whatever it is. So write them down. There's something powerful about writing it down, speaking it into the universe, and just inundating yourself with that goal and just keeping that goal top of mind. It's always running in the back of your mind. I'm doing this because I want to have X, Y, and Z. And you might have to make sacrifices now. So keep that in mind too, that it might be uncomfortable to have those goals, but there's discomfort throughout life. So whether you're uncomfortable today because you're giving up something in return or in the hopes that you'll have something greater down the line, that's a discomfort. But then there's also the discomfort of, I'm living really comfortably today. I'm living outside of my means today, but your future self might notice that discomfort. So it's the trade-off of choosing the discomfort. I choose your hard is how I've heard it said, is like being healthy is hard, but also being unhealthy is hard. And it's the same thing for your finances. Being financially healthy is hard, but being financially unhealthy is hard too. I don't want to see people go into bankruptcy. I don't want to see people working until they're 80 because they didn't save enough throughout their life. I don't want to see people running out of money and having to rely on Medicaid if they need to be in a long-term care facility. Like, those are the things I want people to avoid. But these are the conversations that we don't always have because money is sort of a taboo topic still. And I want to be the one to break that stigma of money being an uncomfortable conversation. It's just that it's a difficult conversation to have because we don't have it a lot. But there's never, and I've said this in many other episodes, there's never any judgment when you talk to us, when you talk to any financial professional who's here to help you, anybody who's acting in a fiduciary capacity. we are acting in your best interest. Everything you tell us is confidential. We are not going around and blasting your information on social media and talking about, wow, look at this person's situation, because we all have been there. Like, we are not perfect. We are not here to judge anybody for what they've done. What I want to know is that you're being truthful with me about your situation. I know it's embarrassing. I know it's uncomfortable sometimes, but being truthful is how we get to the bottom of it and how we fix it. And that's the goal of having a financial plan, really, is to put into place an action plan that helps you get closer to those goals, actionable bite-sized pieces that you can take steps towards every single day that gets you closer to those goals. So as you're thinking about that, just remember that there's no judgment, but it's, if you find that you feel like you're drowning every month, or you just aren't progressing towards your goals as fast as you'd like, just know that when you come and talk to a professional, we're never going to judge you for that. We want to help you. Like, that's why I got into the business, is I wanted to help people. And so, like, I don't want you to feel embarrassed or judged. I want you to feel like this person understands my situation. They understand where I'm coming from, and they want to help me get out of this situation. And goals are the place we start. That's usually the place we start with in the financial planning process overall, is defining your goals. Because again, if you don't have goals, if an emergency comes up, then you're going to be unprepared. And you can't plan for every single emergency. But if you have a certain dollar amount in the bank that helps you sleep better at night, in the event that you have $1,000 worth of car repairs that have to be paid for immediately, or else you can't have your car, you can't drive it to work. If you, again, need a home repair, it's your hot water tank, you can't go without hot water, that needs to be fixed immediately. If you don't have that emergency fund or those resources to pay for that expense, then we're talking about credit cards. And then that's a whole other conversation about sometimes the problems with credit cards. Now, again, as I've said in previous episodes, credit cards are a wonderful tool if used properly. But a lot of the times, because of the lack of education that we have around personal finance, credit cards get abused all the time. And I don't want that to happen either. If you need to use it in an emergency, that's okay. But it's going to be a lot of interest accrued over time, probably, if you have to put several $1,000s on a credit card, versus if you would have taken the discipline to set aside $300 a month, then you might not have needed to go into credit card debt. So now that we've defined your goals, let's talk about how we get closer to those goals. The way, again, I said take it in bite-sized chunks. So some of the ways you do it in bite-sized chunks is to define what are called SMART goals. So SMART is going to be specific. The goal is specific. The goal is measurable. The goal is achievable. It's realistic. It's relevant and realistic, and it has a timeline on it. So I did kind of already talk about that, but just to package all of that together, what I'm talking about when I'm saying defining goals is know why, and then we'll figure out how. The how is where the SMART comes into play. So we're defining goals in the SMART way of your goal is specific. It's something that's concrete. It's not just this vague idea of I want to retire. That's very vague. So we want to be really specific with that. Then we want to measure it, again, with the numbers that we're talking about. And then we want it to be realistic, so it's achievable. Because if it's too far in the distance, if it's too out of reach, you're going to feel disappointed when you don't reach that goal. Is it relevant or realistic, as I just said? And then again, putting a deadline on it. So that's how you define goals. And I meant to say that earlier. And then, so whenever you're working towards the progress of your goals, we not only want to help you define your goals, but we want to measure your progress towards those goals. So every year when you come in to see us for your annual performance review, for your financial plan review, we want to see, hey, here's what your goal was. We call it a statement of financial purpose that kind of encompasses your overarching goal. And we come in and we say, hey, how'd you do this year? How's the emergency fund looking? We'll revisit those goals, that statement of financial purpose, to see how you're tracking. And you say, Steph, I really messed up this year. I had all these emergencies come up, and my health really took a decline, and I didn't get to do any of those goals. That's when we say, that's okay. It's not, we want you to feel like you can reset. And you are not letting me down if you don't reach your goals, if you don't stick to the plan. But I want to at least hold you accountable to say, okay, well, that happened. Now let's figure out if you got into credit card debt over that. Let's figure out a way you can dig yourself out of that. Let's reset. Let's redefine your goals if we need to. Maybe you had an inheritance come in. Maybe you have a larger sum of money than you anticipated. That's in a good case, a best case scenario, right? Is you have extra money now. But we need to maybe redefine your goals at that point. It is we had X, Y, and Z happen, good or bad, and that's caused my situation to change. And so when your situation changes, we need to think about redefining and revisiting those goals. Okay, does this goal still apply to you? No, I paid off that credit card, so we can get rid of that. Does this goal still apply to you? Yes, I'm still on track to retiring on this date, whatever. And then again, we can revisit your financial plan to say, okay, I think you're still on track towards this. It might look a little scary right now, but based on what you're saving into your 401k or whatever other investments you have, I still think based on what I think the market might do, I still think you're on track towards that goal. So then we go back to, okay, then what are the short-term goals? And if there's something really dire that needs to happen or change, maybe you need to decrease your 401k contributions for a little while to get more money in your bank account so that you can pay off those debts. And then eventually, once those debts are paid off, then you can increase your savings again. But your goals are living and breathing because you are living and breathing. So we never want them to stay static. If they change, if your life changes, life happens. Again, good or bad. So it's going to be a matter of redefining those goals. If the goals stay the same, fantastic. If you've just inched a little closer to them, awesome. If the goals need to be completely scrapped and we need to start over again, that's awesome too. But again, as we're coming up on the new year, this is something that's going to be really, really important, I think, to as you look towards the future. And if you fall off the wagon, that's okay too, because we can always circle back. Again, I want to be your accountability buddy. So I want you to say, hey, Steph, I really messed up this time. And I'm going to say, that is okay. Life happens. And let's figure out a way to get you back on track. Or if things are going awesome, then that's a fantastic conversation too. So we want to help you. We want to help you define goals and stay on track towards those goals, and then redefine them every year or as needed. If you get married, that's a huge life change. Now we need to redefine what that looks like and how you and your spouse are going to handle your finances, because that can cause a lot of strain on a marriage if you are not on the same page about your finances. So maybe you got divorced. That's another huge strain on your finances potentially. You have a child, strain on your finances. It's different. It's a different outlook on your finances than what you had before. And that changes your goals, because maybe you 5 years ago weren't thinking about college saving, but now you have a child and you have to think about those things because that child is going to be an adult before you know it. So having someone in your corner that can give you the hard truths or can just reassure you that you are on track towards those goals is going to be really helpful. And you do not have to have tons and tons of money to talk to a financial advisor. Most people at least do complimentary consultations, but we don't have an asset minimum on accounts that are managed by us. So anybody who wants to sit down and have a conversation and is ready to get real about their finances, we want to help you. So if you want more information about how this all ties together for your unique situation, feel free to give us a call anytime. It is 724-733-4334 or visit us at ytswealth.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, follow us on all social media platforms. It is Watch Your Assets, and we will see you on the next one.